We are seeing altcoins rocket on the back of the US Federal Reserve cutting interest rates. We are seeing altcoins really start to have a whole bunch of steam pushed into them, and we are seeing a really nice reaction in the market after an expected really volatile and like essentially a very high liquidity day where people are looking to move prices and try and liquidate people as quick as possible. We are actually starting to see the aftermath or the results of the rate cuts, which is a very strong move to the upside. There are so many things happening right now that I think are really showing a very strong indication that we could have a very crazy end to 2025 for altcoins. So this is a very important video, and I did want to make this today to show you what we are seeing, including some pretty interesting information going on here. So I want to go through all of that today. First off, I did just want to give a kind of quick level setting of where we're at in the market right now. You can see a very green day here. The average being probably about 10% up for many of the altcoins here. We can see Bitcoin up only about 1.6%, but we have Solana up 6.3%. We have things like Hyperliquid up 5%, some smaller coins like Immutable up about 18%, ICP up 4, Pengu up 17, SPX up 11, Fartcoin up 11. I mean, we are seeing a lot of these memes continuing to run as they usually do, kind of somewhat leading the way here. We can even see Sui up 10%. Sui is one that has been somewhat quiet for the past little while, so we're starting to see some life out of that. Aerodrome, another channel favorite, is doing well. And then XRP 3%, Ethereum 2.5%. Again, really strong moves going on here in the market, indicating that we are seeing a pretty consistent response throughout the entire market to what we have actually just seen out of rate cuts. I think this is going to continue. I have a whole bunch of different information, particularly some from the Fed, indicating what the next moves might be in the future with regard to more rate cuts, which I think is why we're seeing some of these moves happening within the altcoin market, is because the market's trying to price in the probability of that happening. Now, if we take a quick look here, you can see we've actually done quite well with many of these trades that we've taken over the past couple of days. Everything is in profit, have not taken any profit yet on the Zbek, ICP, or Ondo trades. But as you can see, for the Linnea, Epic, and Aerodrome trades, we have actually taken profit on both of these, and we are free riding at this point. Now, Epic was one that I had actually opened during that sponsored video that we had made the other day. So that is one that if you've been paying attention to the channel, you very likely should be in on. And then also Aerodrome was another one that I took during our Aerodrome video when we were making that as well. This is another one, both of them up over 100% at this point, looking really nice. Here we can see the Aerodrome chart. We're actually getting very close to that second profit taking point for me, and then of course we're going to be getting up to that third one. Ideally, again, there is no guarantees though, but I have essentially already secured profits for both of these, and then I have set the stop losses to break even. So at this point, like I said, I'm basically free riding. If they hit their take profits, great. If they don't, oh well, part of the game, but we are essentially set up very nicely here. So things looking really good after we have seen some moves up in the market over the past several days. Now, moving along, I want to take a look at just kind of where we're at with the overall market, because this is very important, because even though we are seeing some nice moves to the upside, we're seeing some mixed information. We're seeing some really good information, and we're seeing some that maybe could indicate, again, a short-term pullback. We do still have that quad witching event coming tomorrow, so I still would expect very strong volatility, and I would not be doing anything too crazy. Again, this is all purely my opinion, and this is what I am planning on doing. You, of course, can make your own decisions and kind of live with the outcome of whatever those decisions are. Now, moving along here, we have the open interest and volume. We are sitting near all-time highs for open interest, as we sit near all-time highs for Bitcoin price as well. We are also seeing volume really start to spike again. We'd seen kind of a multi-month downtrend going on with a couple spikes here and there, but really we haven't seen the volume that we were seeing towards the end of the year last year and the beginning of the year this year. Now, if we look at the RSI heat map, the majority of the market here is basically sitting in average, the average market or the average RSI number essentially being 54. We do have, of course, a couple that are maybe a little bit overheated, things like Camino, IMX, Eigen, Solana, Bitcoin even, BNB, AVAX. Some of these are sitting towards a little bit more of like the strong, some even in the overbought category, but the vast majority of the market sitting here within kind of the neutral range still. Likewise, we are also seeing the fear and greed index sitting in neutral as well. So again, the market, even though we are seeing some good news and we are seeing some price movements, the market itself still not really in too much of a greed-based environment. It is still very much a neutral environment for the market at this point. I do expect that this could change, especially if we continue to see more days like this, but at least as of right now, we are still seeing a very kind of even-keeled market, relatively speaking. Now, with the exchange liquidation map, this is something that I always look at. This is something that we talk about fairly frequently on the channel because frankly, I'm just so surprised with how dang accurate this thing is. It always seems to know exactly where things are going, particularly when all three time frames line up. So important such that I actually want to go into its own tab and look at all of these specifically, because on the overview, it only does the 1 and 7 day. On this one, it does the 30 day as well. So we're going to be going through all of them. Here we can see a little bit of a slight kind of tilt towards the downside. We can also see liquidity volumes are stacking up. $4 billion on the 1 day is a bit high, not super high, but it is a bit high for what we normally see, and it is indicating a move to the downside because there have been a bunch of longs entering in the market, coupled with the fact that we have actually seen a lot of shorts liquidated as well because of some of the recent moves up. We have seen a 7-day high recently within the past 24 hours, and so that is of course kind of helping some of that here. On the 7-day, we can also see a little bit more of a tilted, or an indication tilting that we will see a move back to the downside with, again, $10 billion here of cumulative long liquidations if we were to get all the way to the bottom here, although we can see the majority of the longs down around the 113,500 range, almost $7 billion liquidated if we were to see that type of move. So it's hard to say for sure if we will see that move and if, kind of what magnitude of move that we see. But $10 billion is actually quite a lot for this type of time frame. So I would expect that we probably see some move coming here to the downside. Also on the 30-day, we could see even more. We are looking at $20 billion of cumulative long liquidations to the downside here. Again, the majority of them going to be kind of right around the $109,000 Bitcoin range. So again, this is massively important to understand because generally, I think with almost 100% certainty, whenever we see all three of these line up, it does usually mean a move is coming. Now, it doesn't mean a move is coming all the way to the downside. It could even just be a sweep down to like the 112,000 range. That in itself would liquidate tens of billions of dollars of liquidity, really shake some fear into the market, and then we could see a move back to the upside. Again, it's very hard to say for sure, but usually when we see these types of moves going on, you should be prepared for a move to the downside. So with this being said, I am of course going to be monitoring my trades very closely, looking at potential rejection here. If we do, of course, I will maybe continue to pull some of the profits off the table and either wait to look to enter shorts or just sit on my hands and do nothing, because that oftentimes is just as good of a strategy as anything else. Now, moving along here, I want to go over kind of the future looking and the future forecast of what we're seeing potentially for the end of this year. The essentially summary from the Fed meeting was that they're pricing in between 1 to 2. There was, I think, 10 people on the Fed who are looking for 2 rate cuts, and I think 9 who are looking for 1. So it's very hard to say exactly which we are going to get, but at least as it relates to the end of October Fed meeting, we can see here that there's about an 87% chance, as of now at least, that we do see rate cuts coming in. And then again, if we go into December, there's about a 78% chance that we see yet another rate cut after that, though there is a 20% chance that we do see kind of only that one rate cut through the end of the year. So we'll have to keep a very close eye on this for sure, just to see kind of exactly what makes sense here. But at least as of right now, the most likely outcome is 125 basis point rate cut in each of the next meetings. So we'll have to see, of course, we will stay updated here, but you can see here the probability percentages of what has happened over the past little while. You could see we were really only looking at about 1 rate cut towards the end of the year until about a week ago. Then the odds actually spiked dramatically to about 2 rate cuts towards the end of the year. So this can change. This is not necessarily guaranteed, but we do need to essentially keep a very close eye on what is going on here to make sure that we are seeing or that we're tracking this accordingly. Because if we continue to see rate cuts, and if we continue to see the rate cut cycle continue on, this is very, very good for altcoins and should make a massive difference in the scale of alt season that we do see. Now, moving along, I just want to give a little bit more context here around kind of why we're looking at these rate cuts and what this means for crypto. Because right now we can see we're seeing the job tracking growth really, really start to slow down. Now, this is a bad thing, of course, that can be stimulated with rate cuts, which is why it's being done. The other problem, though, at the same time, which is kind of, I would say, a countering level of information here, is that we are seeing PCE, both annual and core, stay much, much more elevated than realistically what we would like. We can see back here kind of prior to COVID, we were sitting between 1.5, well, really kind of just around 1.5 is kind of what we were looking at. And it was pretty steady here. We obviously saw a dip down here where we almost got into like a deflationary type of environment. You can actually see that if you look at annual PCE, we did get into a deflationary environment. But again, this is during the great financial crisis in 2009. Otherwise, it's been very, very consistent between basically the lows of about 0, between the highs of about 2.3, kind of within this kind of time frame after things had been settled out from the great financial crisis. Well, after COVID, we are seeing that the kind of the return to normal is a much, much higher core PCE level, which is about a full percentage point higher from what we were seeing pre-COVID. This is, of course, a concern, and this is something that is high for what the Fed is wanting to do. They are wanting to bring this down back to this level. Well, cutting interest rates generally raises inflation, and so that would move this in the opposite direction. So the Fed is in a little bit of a pickle here in the sense that they don't really want to be cutting rates to try and get this PCE to go lower, but they also need to cut rates because the job growth is really starting to struggle. Unemployment is rising. It's the highest since, I think, the end of 2021. So there's a lot of things like this that are really quite concerning and kind of showing two different outcomes here. So that's why, at least in my opinion, even though we have an indication that we will be seeing one rate cut in each of the next two meetings, I wouldn't count too hard on that just because we are seeing some very, very kind of counterintuitive or like counteracting data going on right here that is very important to pay attention to. Because if all of a sudden job growth really starts to kick back up and PCE continues to go back up, well, then I would say that the odds of rate cuts are almost completely off the table, right? Now, if PCE continues to go down, which I would doubt with rate cuts, but let's just say that it does for argument's sake, and job growth continues to go even lower, well, then of course we might actually be getting even more rate cuts. However, this is a bit of a catch-22, and this is a bit of a tricky dance here, because if we see the data go too far to the downside, then we very, very likely slip into a recession, and at that point, alt season is effectively canceled. So we really don't want that to happen. So it's very important that we keep a very close eye of what's happening here. Now, the last thing I want to check out here to show you where we're at, this is called the like the FOMC dot plot. Each dot is essentially each Fed member's opinion of where the rate should be as of the end of this year. So you could see here, the majority of the people actually thinking between 3.5 to 3.75, which is exactly why we are seeing that being the most likely outcome. However, you might see that there's a very large contingent of others who are thinking that we should effectively hold between 4.25 and 4.0, which is where we're at currently, which for those of you who do math, means that we would not be seeing any more rate cuts for the end of the year. There's even one person who indicated that we should not be cutting rates at all. And then there's a couple people who are kind of in the middle, and then one person way out here who's looking for like massive rate cuts coming in, like 150 basis points from where we're at now. So we'll have to see kind of exactly what happens here towards the end of the year. But this is kind of, you can see tracking over the next couple of years, they do expect rates to just be generally lower. So hopefully, that is something that we end up seeing. Now, last thing, I want to show you that this is still altcoin season. We are getting rate cuts. Alts are moving. All of this stuff is actually coming on according to plan. So I do think that we do still have a very, very strong possibility of a wild end to 2025, and this could be absolutely unreal for our bags. So again, just stay up to date, make sure that you are keeping track of all these things that are going on, particularly with the macroeconomic situation right now. It is very volatile. So we just need to make sure that we're staying flexible. We're not getting locked into, oh yes, two rate cuts are guaranteed this year, anything like that. that would be silly, right? So just make sure that we're staying flexible to what is going on, and make sure that we're understanding, kind of the various different rakes that could be stepped on, so to speak, along the way. So overall though, hopefully you did find the information in this video useful. If you did, of course, a like and a subscribe does help me out. You also can make sure to hit that notification bell, as that does also help me out as well. If you are interested in trading with us, I do also have the links in the description below. Again, none of these are recommendations to buy. This is just purely what I personally am doing. You, of course, can do with that information what you will, but if you are interested in trading, we do have those affiliate links in the description below, and they all have some really, really great deposit bonuses. BTCC having probably the best one with 10% deposit bonuses guaranteed on your first time deposit. So that is a really, really good deal. If you are interested, I would check it out. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Also, if you have any comments, just drop those in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what we see coming on from over the next end of the year with all, the rate cuts and the economy, all this type of stuff, how this impacts alt season. Do you think alt season's coming? Is it going to be better than 2021? Is it going to be worse? What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear all of them. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.